Welcome to this explainer on Deming's quality philosophy in maintenance planning. We're going to dive into how an outsider's totally radical philosophy can completely transform your industrial efficiency. Have you ever wondered why fixing things faster doesn't actually make your operation run any smoother? Well, today we are breaking down a classic framework that flips traditional maintenance planning entirely on its head. We're going to explore some truly eye-opening concepts that challenge the very foundation of how industrial operations have always been managed.
To really understand this profound shift, we first need to look at the man behind it all. Edwrds Deming was a revolutionary thinker who, amazingly enough, was initially completely rejected in America back in the 1950s. You see, post-war American factories were absolutely booming. They were cranking out products at a record pace, and management basically thought, hey, we don't need any help. But Deming took his ideas over to Japan, and there, he helped completely rebuild their manufacturing sector from the ground up by instilling this relentless focus on quality over sheer output. Ultimately, he returned home as a global icon, publishing his classic text Out of the Crisis in 1986. And today, his methods are celebrated all over the world.
Section 1. The Productivity Illusion. Think about standard maintenance practices for a second. The stuff you'd find in a typical maintenance planning and scheduling handbook. They are heavily oriented toward productivity, right? You know the mindset. Get more things done, turn those wrenches faster, check the boxes. But Deming? He focused intensely on quality. So what happens when you prioritize quality first? At first glance, it almost seems completely at odds with a maintenance team's drive for pure output. Productivity demands speed, while quality demands precision. But actually, these two concepts reconcile beautifully when you look just a little deeper into how industrial systems truly operate. Okay, let's unpack this a bit. When we improve quality, we naturally improve productivity. Why? Well, because we completely eliminate the rework of correcting defective products or, fixing the exact same machine twice. Think about the intense friction of rework. Every single time an asset breaks down shortly after it was supposed to be fixed, you are bleeding time, you're bleeding resources, and morale absolutely tanks. If you fix it right the first time, you spend far less time on wasted effort later. And those previously wasted hours, they can now be used to produce actual, salable products. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is this. Quality doesn't slow you down, it frees you up. We are facing a massive crisis of efficiency right now in standard operations. Get this, a staggering 65% of maintenance efforts are wasted on completely non-productive areas. I'm talking about the walking back and forth, searching for parts, waiting on approvals, or just dealing with the wrong tools. That leaves a measly 35% of effort for actual wrench time. That's the valuable time technicians are physically performing valid maintenance work. Maintenance planning's entire intent is to aggressively shrink that 65% slice of wasted time, specifically to free up our highly skilled technicians for the real work they were actually trained to do. But hold on, there is a dangerous trap here. Simply measuring this wrench time won't actually guide the company's mission. Deming makes it incredibly clear that measures of productivity do not magically lead to an improvement in productivity. You can run as fast as you want, but if you're fixing the wrong things, or fixing them poorly, you're literally going nowhere. Just because you know your team's wrench time is high, it doesn't mean you're producing the right product, or engaging in the correct preventative maintenance, or even working efficiently. You absolutely cannot use a productivity indicator beyond its useful intent and somehow expect it to solve your root operational problems. Section 2. Adopting the new philosophy. So we start with Deming's point 1, which demands that companies look to the future and build a robust maintenance strategy. Now, in any industrial environment, it is incredibly easy to get mired down in the chaotic, everyday problems of today. A machine goes down, everyone panics, you patch it up, and you just move on to the next fire. But Deming tells us we must create a constancy of purpose. You need a steadfast, long-term vision for improvement, rather than just running around reacting to the daily chaos. It's really about building a proactive system that anticipates failure rather than just barely surviving it. Then there's point 2, and honestly, this brings a pretty harsh warning. You must adopt the new philosophy, because tolerating the status quo just because you are currently profitable will inevitably lead to your company's demise. Complacency is a silent killer in business. If you rest on your current success, if you accept commonly tolerated delays and embrace standard levels of poor workmanship, other companies, and for that matter, other countries, will absolutely overtake you. The entire organization, from the executive boardroom all the way down to the shop floor, has to understand that the status quo is a very dangerous trap. What this means is that true maintenance planning isn't just a schedule drawn up on a whiteboard. It's a completely new operating philosophy. It demands robust management support to overcome our basic human instincts. Look, human nature tells us to just fix things when they break. There's a deeply ingrained satisfaction, a real dopamine hit, honestly, that comes from swooping in like a hero and fixing a broken machine in the heat of the moment. True maintenance planning, however, is tedious, it's methodical, and it's preventative. It requires significantly more coordination, discipline, and sustained effort than that addictive reactive habit we all fall into. Jumping to point 4, Deming urges us to stop fixating on upfront first-time savings and start actually considering the overall life cycle costs of our assets. When a budget is tight, it is so tempting for a company to just go with the absolute lowest price tag right now, whether that's for parts or equipment or even labor. But operating on price tag alone is remarkably short-sighted. Doing so almost always comes at the expense of a much greater lifetime cost through constant breakdowns, subpar performance, and premature asset replacement. This directly speaks to the famous 1-10-100 rule. It costs $1 to prevent a problem, $10 to correct it later if you catch it early, and a whopping $100 if you ignore it until the system fails completely. In the context of what we're talking about today, this is incredibly relevant to maintenance staffing levels and planning resources. Spending less money up front on your maintenance staffing doesn't actually save you money, and inevitably skyrockets your ongoing long-term maintenance costs later. You are essentially paying massive penalties down the road for the cheap decisions you're making today. Section 3. The Transformation Mandate. Deming's point 13 highlights something fascinating, and it places the burden firmly on the shoulders of leadership. He notes that while there is absolutely no shortage of good, hardworking people in our workforce, there is a severe shortage of high-level knowledge. And advances in competitive position have their roots directly in this knowledge. It means management can't just point fingers and blame the workforce for inefficiencies. Management absolutely must go through rigorous new learning themselves and actively encourage education for everyone in the facility. And the reason this education is so vital is because maintenance planning goes completely against our natural evolution in this industry. Just think about how a maintenance manager usually gets their job. They rise through the ranks by being a fantastic technician first, and then an effective, quick-thinking supervisor. Their entire career, their entire professional identity has been built on fixing things as they break faster and faster. But because there's very little formal education out there for maintenance management, these leaders must actively pursue formal study. They have to literally rewire their brains to break those old reactionary habits so they can do a fundamentally better job in preventative asset maintenance. And that leads right into point 14, which boldly declares that this transformation, it will not happen organically. It is not going to be the result of some spontaneous grassroots effort bubbling up from the shop floor. Management absolutely must take charge and take deliberate action to make it happen. You cannot simply pass out a fancy new handbook, send out a company-wide email blast, and expect the culture to magically reinvent itself. True structural change requires active, relentless, top-down leadership every single day. Because of this, management has a very real struggle on its hands. This preventative approach is completely unnatural to how we usually operate under pressure, which means it will face heavy, deeply ingrained resistance. People are going to push back. So as a leader, you must relentlessly explain the vision, push against the current, and convince a critical mass of people in your company to actually make these changes stick. It is a long, difficult climb, and frankly, it requires true grit. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to ponder as a leader based on Deming's philosophy. Implementing true maintenance planning means fighting human nature itself. Doing things the right way, the methodical, planned, preventative way, might even invite a bit of exile from your peers who are perfectly comfortable just coasting along with the chaotic status quo. The roadmap to absolute operational excellence is crystal clear, but the ultimate question is, do you have the courage to break with tradition,